I was doing federal time. I was actually on a parole violation in Northern California when the state, actually LA County, picked me up, and they were trying to indict me basically on the same charges that I was already doing the parole violation for. So they took me to LA County Jail. And it's funny, Emily, when I was leaving the federal jail, the correctional officer, the lieutenant, said to the state, "I want this guy back exactly the way I'm sending him to you. He's an important federal prisoner." So I said, "Where are they sending me? What is this all about?" So anyway, I get to LA County Jail, and they put me in SHU, in solitary. And actually, the tier I was on was called death row, because everybody else on that tier was either facing life without parole or the death penalty. And I was there with a parole violation, but that's where they put me, right? O.J. Simpson later came onto that tier also. But my cellmate, the guy in the cell next to me was Lyle Menendez. And his brother was right next to him. And some of these solitary cells have a solid door, and then others have bars. Well, in LA County, they had bars. So you could actually talk to the person next to you. There was also like a short catwalk, and there was glass, so you can see the reflection of that person also that you're talking to all the way down.
And just for listeners who aren't familiar, SHU is solitary housing unit. So that's solitary confinement, as you said earlier, but I want everyone to understand the acronym. And you're right that I've seen totally minimum security prisoners be put in SHU for a nominal violation while incarcerated. I mean, you could, you open your mail wrong and you can get put in SHU. It's definitely wielded as a punishment tool, unfortunately, for these prisoners. So yeah, there's an interesting mix in there. It's not for just the baddest of the bad, quote unquote. So, all right. So you're in SHU, you can see each other, you can talk to each other, and then you're next to one of the Menendez brothers.
Yeah, and obviously I knew who he was because it was all over the news for a couple of years prior to that. But then we just started talking. I was there for 11 months with him, and Erik was there for about 2 months because allegedly they found a note where the brothers were trying to escape. Now, to escape out of that SHU, you had to be Houdini the second. I mean, there's no way you were going to escape. I think they were just trying to separate the brothers prior to their trial. So they moved Erik out of that tier, and I spent the majority of my time with Lyle, and that was about 11 months in total. Because I was fighting my case, and he was obviously going to trial during that time. And we had a lot of interaction. I mean, we spoke quite a bit. At times we spoke for hours during the day. I know initially he was a little bit not standoffish, but didn't want to confide too much. I'm sure his attorney told him, be careful who you speak to in these SHU units. You never know who's going to, end up on a witness stand against you. So I understood that. But then as time went on and we got closer and closer, he really started to share a lot of the stuff that he went through. He was asking my advice. He had never been in trouble before, so this was the first time for him. Asked me some advice about the trial he was going through, about his lawyers. And then he spoke to me, in depth about the abuse from his father.
And can you walk us through all that he shared with you about those various things?
I did, and I never straight out asked him, even though, I said, hey, did you kill your parents? Even though there's certain questions you don't ask when you're in prison. You never ask, hey, what are you in for? What did you do? You just don't do that. That's kind of prison etiquette. But he never outright said, hey, I blew my parents away. Never outright said that. But he started to talk to me about his childhood abuse with his father, how his father sexually abused him from the time he was a youngster. He told me that he was in fear of his father. His father was a very powerful guy. Because I asked him at times, I said, why didn't you go to your family and let them know? Your father had, brothers and sisters. He said, Michael, you don't understand. My dad ruled the family, and if it would have gotten back to him that I went and complained like that, it would have been, I don't know what he would have done to me. So he was in fear of him in that way. I said to him, why didn't you go to the police? They would have protected you possibly. He said, my dad's a powerful guy. If that didn't work out, it would have been, a real problem for me in the house. I don't know what he might have even killed me. I mean, he said things like that. And then I asked him about his mom. I said, listen, your mother is very protective. Didn't she ever do anything to stop it? And he told me, Michael, we were behind closed doors with my dad for hours. My mother would never even intervene. And he said, that her dad ruled the mom. And I believe 100% that he was in fear of his father and his mother.
And Michael, coming from your background, when you are, part of a system, a molecule where there's an order and a hierarchy and there are repercussions and there's accountability and there's all those things, did his explanation resonate with you? The fear that he operated within, that it wasn't easy for him to ask for help, or, it's sort of simple from the outside looking in to think you could have escaped or you could have gone here, but especially as a youth, did it resonate with you that he felt 100% trapped with no way to escape?
I believe that. And look, I have a pretty good BS meter after a while, but I was with him for a long time. I saw him different emotions. I seen tears in his eyes when he was talking to me about certain things. I seen when he was depressed. It's easy to be depressed in there. And I really believed him. And I think he believed his father was powerful enough to overcome any kind of escape that he might have tried to make. When I say escape, other than running away and just breaking contact with everybody, I think he believed that no matter what, his father would find him and there would be serious repercussions. So he lived in fear of his dad. There's no question about it. No question in my mind.
Did it seem that it was for him a sort of kill or be killed, that the choices he had before him, while he had testified that the abuse had stopped, it was, he could sort of never be free of his father who knew what the future held? That did it seem that he was in that point of desperation, and in that way it was his survival or the alternative?
I believe that. I think that in his mind, he thought the only way to escape his dad and his mom, because, the question, well, why your mom, was really to do what he did. And, listen, I don't support the way he did it. Obviously, him and his brother were not criminals. They're not sophisticated. They didn't think about this after. I could see that. But I believe that he felt the only escape from his father was to eliminate his father. I believe that.
And at that time, especially, the topics of, and in general, it is a very horrific and vulnerable topic to discuss, especially at that time. Incest, homosexual incest. I mean, the pedophilia. Like there's a horrific component to the nature of that abuse. And my question is, and at that time especially, it was very rare and taboo and rarely spoken of. So was it difficult for him to talk about? Did it come out right away when you guys were talking? What was the actual origin of him sharing what was deeply traumatic for him?
No, it didn't come out right away. And like I said, I think that his attorneys probably told him, be careful who you talk to in there, which is good advice, obviously. But as time went on, and you're with somebody 24/7, and this is the only person really you have to talk to, things just came out. And I became a little bit more inquisitive, and I said, come on, Lyle, talk to me. What's going on here? And it took probably, I would say, maybe a month or two before he really started to talk to me about this. And we talked about everything, his fear of going to prison, how he was going to be treated in there. One of the things that shook him up a bit, when we used to go to visits, we were shackled and chained, obviously. They do that in SHU. And when they walked us through the prison, we had to actually walk through the prison, or I should say jail. It wasn't a prison, the jail hospital, and through some of the population. And people were not kind to the brothers. I mean, they would, you killed your parents, and they would mock them and everything else. So I think he was scared. What's going to happen to me if I get to prison? How am I going to be treated? And so we talked about that, and I told him basically how to handle himself the best way, that I knew how. So he really got vulnerable with me in that regard. And like I said, he would go out to the visiting room when his visit was late. My 3-year-old son, my Michael Jr., would sit there and talk to him. So he even started to know the family. I'll tell you something maybe funny to us now. It wasn't funny at the time. But my son was 3 years old. He was in the market with my wife, and they were buying some groceries and stuff. And there was a magazine rack there. And so Lyle and Eric's photo was on the front page of the magazine. So my son picked it up, started running through the store and said, "Hey, mommy, here's daddy's good friends, Lyle and Erik." And she got in there, she grabbed the magazine, put him in the stroller, and ran out of the store, she said. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, we got that friendly.
It sounds like you were a trusted, safe adult with him, which it also sounds like he didn't have that his whole life, to that point. There was no one he felt safe with, because there was always the fear of his parents looming over any relationship that he might have felt safe with the family. What things did you hear? What things do you know that the media doesn't know? Certainly the case has been resurrected as DA Gascon has come out and now there have been major legal developments in this case. So a lot of people know a lot about it, but what do you know that they don't?
Well, only the personal conversations I had with him, and I know that people are saying it's not true, and they made it up afterwards, and all of that. But the other thing I do know is that I had my hand in the music industry also. Going back to when my dad was a major figure at Buddha Records in Casablanca, so I was around the industry, and I've heard of Jose Menendez, and he wasn't well liked. I mean that I heard. And even it became a few people after me, that I spoke with after this told me, well, he wasn't a well-liked guy. Nobody cared about this guy. He was pretty tough. And so, things started to really fit together, in my head. And when they got convicted, I was really kind of upset. I mean, I didn't voice it anywhere, but I was upset that they didn't allow the abuse to come into the trial the second time. First time it ended up in a hung jury. I don't think they would have, got sentenced like they did. I don't think they would have had a first-degree murder conviction had that abuse come in. And listen, if Lyle would have presented himself on the stand about the abuse the way he spoke to me, I think people would have believed him, because I believed him.
Two of the pieces of evidence that were introduced recently that had an impact on the legal disposition of the case currently. One was that the discovery of, or the entering into the record of, a letter that one of the brothers had written to a cousin just months prior to the killings. And that illustrates a contemporaneous quality to the abuse, which that was part of the prosecution's argument at that second trial. Look, this was so far, there's no connection, there's no nexus, timing is a thing. So it went to that. It also went to the veracity of the allegations because it was one of the brothers saying to his cousin, articulating about the abuse. So it's essentially proof, corroborating evidence at the same time. And then the second is the public comments by a member of the popular boy band that had a million iterations, Menudo, that had been managed by Jose Menendez. That individual is the same age as one of the brothers, and he came out with allegations of the same type of sexual abuse. So my question is, in your conversations with Lyle, did he ever mention, I wrote about it in letters to my cousins, or yes, I've told family members, my peer group, but, I can't tell the adults? Did he say, my dad, I know he does it to other people? And, our conversation at this moment, we are not entering things into legal exhibits. So I am asking you for your perspective and your experience with Lyle. And certainly we're not on the stand right now. There are no hearsay rules that apply to us. So
Right.
I'm curious, though, if he ever brought up either of those two issues or things with you in those days.
No, he didn't, because again, he always expressed fear that if it had gotten back to his father in any way, he would pay dearly for that. Regarding the letter that Erik wrote, what appeared even more authentic to me was that he didn't go into detail in that letter. He just said the abuse is continuing, and he didn't go into detail about with his father. And the way I look at it is that he was afraid to even get into that detail, to have it, maybe if that letter was seen by anybody, because at that point, I don't think they had it in their mind what they were going to do. But I think he was afraid to even get into detail in that letter as to the extent of the abuse. He just said it's happening again, which indicates he probably did speak to somebody, to his cousin, and now he just, put it kind of subtly in that letter. But no, Lyle always expressed, because I said to him, why did you continue to go through this? And it was always fear of my dad, fear of my dad. My dad's powerful. If it ever got back to him, I'd be in so much more trouble. I don't know what he would do to me. And he said that many times.
You are a parent, and you were a parent then. And did you feel in getting to know Lyle that he had, was he able to, flourish in any way? Did you feel like you were engaging with a totally broken and destroyed individual, someone who had had their youth absolutely stolen from them and squandered? Or was there some hope for a future for him that he could actually be who he was supposed to be, at least in terms of a freedom of personality,
Yeah, he seemed broken to me, and I even said to him, did you do it for the money? I mean, was money important to you? And he said, Michael, we had everything. My father treated me good in that regard. He never mentioned anything about inheritance or anything like that to me. But he said, we had everything that we wanted. My father really wanted us to be successful in life. So, and then he said something very strange to me at one point. He said, I never forget this. He said, I don't know how I'm going to exist without my dad. And again, he never admitted to me that he killed them, but he said, I don't know how I'm going to exist without my dad. We were so dependent upon him. He was so much a part of my life, more than the mom. He never really said that about the mom, but he said it about the dad. And, in the aftermath of everything, I said, wow, not only was he in fear of him, but he was so reliant on him. It was strange.
Studies have shown, and especially since then, just the traumatic impacts from incest in particular, and the inability of those victims to in any way fight back or seek recourse, and having to be trapped, like the trapped nature of that, the violation of the trust. I mean, there's no way to even articulate these concepts with the depth that they require for the horrific nature of incestuous abuse. So certainly, yes, it's a very complicated psychological dynamic that those kids were in forever. What kind of personality, what kind of guy was Lyle? Was he funny? Was he quiet? Did he love to laugh? Did he ask questions of you? Was he curious? What kind of guy was Lyle?
Yeah, he was curious. I mean, I thought he would have been a fine young man. I mean, under different circumstances, obviously. He was likable. I mean, I liked him. I enjoyed speaking with him. He was inquisitive, like I said. He would ask a lot of questions. He wanted to know about the mob stuff with me and all that. That was kind of intriguing to him. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, had I known him as a young man back then on the outside, I would have liked him. What I did think, though, I thought that he might have been the controlling one out of the two brothers. I mean, obviously, Erik was 2 years younger than him. So I think he was kind of the shot caller between the two of them. But then, and again, we know that they take dramatic liberty all the time. I did see the movie, the series Monsters. And in that series, they portray Erik as having a little bigger part in this than just being led by Lyle. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying that's the way it was portrayed in the series, that he was the one that wrote the screenplay, and he was a little bit more involved in the planning of this than I got the impression of later on. And again, they never told me, what they did. They didn't lay out the plot. They didn't do anything like that. But I just felt that Lyle was a little bit more controlling than Erik might have been.
And within that dynamic, was there a protective nature? We all understand, or those of us who have siblings understand the protective nature of older siblings, and especially in an abuse environment where older siblings try to protect their younger ones from enduring what they've endured. Was that a component as well? Did you get a sense of?
Yeah, I saw that. He never ever said anything negative about his brother. Never. It was always what we went through and the torture. And, he did say he tried to protect his brother. He was always, loving towards his brother and never said anything negative towards him whatsoever.
When you guys talked about his fear of the sort of impending incarceration and you gave him advice, did he talk about his, did he have extra fear for his brother for that reason? Was he more worried for his brother than himself? Like, did you get a sense of that type of dynamic there?
I think he was, because he asked me, he said, in normal situation, would we be separated or would they send us to the same prison? And I said to him, listen, the prison system can do anything they want. They may put you together, they may not. And that was troublesome to him. And as it turned out, I think they were separated for many, many years until I read 2017 or 2018, but prior to that, they were separated. That was concerning to him. And he say, I remember him asking me if we can request to be together. I said, you can request anything, but they don't have to go along with that, so who knows? And that was troublesome to him.
Yeah. And what was, if you can share, what was the advice that you gave him to navigate the system and to navigate his own safety in the incarceratory system?
Well, I told him, I said, listen, if you're really worried about your safety, I said, they're going to put you in lockdown and shoe. I said, but, the state prisons, quite honestly, they're a little bit more rough than the federal system. In the state, you can have more issues than you would in federal. In the feds, they watch you a little bit better, and they'll lock you down if they think you're in danger. I told him, listen, I said, I got to tell you this, just be respectful to other inmates in prison. I said, try to align yourself with somebody there that understands what you might have gone through a little bit, and just keep your nose clean. I told him that. I said, look, you may get some trouble. I said, I don't think anybody's going to look to hurt you. I said, if they think you have money in there, they may look to extort you. I said, that's normal in these state prisons. I said, but you just got to carry yourself properly and align yourself with the right person in there or people. And, he didn't ask me specifically about, I'm sure he heard that people maybe get raped in there, all that. He didn't get into that, and I didn't get into it either. If he would have asked me about it, I would have given him my opinion, but he didn't get into that.
If they are indeed released and you were to meet them for a cup of coffee or have dinner together, what would you share with them?
Well, I'd be happy for them, number one. I think, at worst, this should have been, if it was a life sentence, it should have been parolable, no question about it. And I think if they resentence it and they give them the ability to make parole, they will make parole, because if they're already done over the minimum time, because they were under 26 at the time. And I would just, if they ask me questions about what to do for the, rest of their lives, I'd advise them as best I could. I don't know how they're going to make a living. I don't know if there's any money left. It's been a long time. And I know that there's certain restrictions on how they could earn money with respect to their story. So, I'll just advise them to stay straight. They're both married. Hopefully the marriages stay together now that they'll be on the outside. And any advice they want from me, I'd give them. I'd be very happy for them. They were model prisoners, as far as I understand. And they'll be okay on the outside. They'll be okay.
Michael Franzese, you are always such an incredible wealth of information. We are so grateful to you for your time and for your insight. Are there any final words or thoughts that you'd like to share with listeners about your experience?
No, it's just that, listen, when people prove themselves a certain way, I'm a guy of second chances. I believe that they've earned it, as far as the way they conducted themselves in prison. I think they're rehabilitated. I don't think you'll ever see any action like that from them again, not even remotely close to it. And I believe they deserve a second chance, and hopefully they'll get one.